government norms, and you do what all these things say, and then you're a complacent, compliant little sheep who is following in line with everybody else, and you're just going to toe the party line. And that's what everybody does. The same thing with birthdays. Birthdays are a ritual. Rituals and celebrations have been a big part of society for a long time, and a very important part of influencing and manipulating people into a cohesive mass of a familiarized collective behavior. So that's why you have rituals and customs developed, so people can relate to each other from this unifying basis, even though it's simply based in appearances, and it might have some substantial truth behind it as an original source, but it's been developed into a false phantasmal appearance where people buy into it as something substantive to invest their time, if not as well their money, into propagating and perpetuating in life. With higher power, abstraction, and consciousness comes higher fear, higher questions, higher doubt, higher insecurity, higher discomfort, and higher need for beliefs to be invented to alleviate the dissonance we feel inside from those unanswered questions. Would you need these beliefs if you never thought of the questions that these beliefs are used to answer? No. If you don't have a question that needs an answer, then you won't have the belief that provides an answer to that question. You won't have the need for that belief to answer a question that has all these problems of discomfort, insecurity, doubt, whatever. So no, imagine any other animal and they do not have the beliefs and irrational justifications for them to feel secure about abstracted questions about existence and purposes, etc. Higher order consciousness potential is a gift and also a curse if not understood. That's why I call it the double-edged sword of consciousness. Understanding the power of symbols, language, and words allows you to understand how they developed and for what reason, the importance of living, existence, how limited life is from birth to death, and how to maximize your time through your attention and awareness, which is where your consciousness is directed, is part of motivation towards higher goals. Understanding ourselves and reality in harmony promotes more harmonious actions that automatically produce a maximum potential in our progression in life because we are in line and not conflicting with reality and natural principles of our human nature and existence. And that's again where you can begin to externalize this as a true self, higher self, somewhere else, existing somewhere else, because of the dichotomous relationship between who we are and who we can become, who we are now and who we were before. Whether we're in line and not conflicting with reality is seen as being in line and not conflicting with that truer self somewhere else. Since we see reality as a thing that exists outside of us, but we also project the concept of a truer self, of a higher self, as somewhere out there as its own existing thing. But it's just us projecting, anthropomorphizing, and personifying ourselves onto concepts in order to give them an external concreteness, so to say. Even though it's not concreteness in reality, it's outside of ourselves existing somewhere else. So to continue, the rest of the world, however, may remain in modalities of falsity and act to prevent greater actualization of right and good. You can view getting what you want in life as some kind of mystical connection or fantasy magical connection, like people who believe in The Secret and, oh yeah, the law of attraction. The energy you put out is what you get back, so I'm gonna wish for money, and oh, things happen, I'm gonna view it as karma, as because, oh, I did good things in my life or my past life, but then when bad things happen, oh, well, that must be because I did a bad thing in my past life, and blah, blah, blah bullshit. So you can view when you get something you want, like, oh, wow, thank you, universe, thank you, God, for giving me what I wanted. You can view things like that as some concocted fantasy, mystical connection or magical connection. If you want to believe that, then go ahead. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter to me. If you tell me that, you'll just look like a fool in my eyes. That's all. But it doesn't matter for me to be more moral. It doesn't matter for you to be more moral. So if you want to believe it, go ahead. But it's not required, and sure as hell not going to help you in dealing with concreteness and reality and understanding cause and effect as it actually happens. And that you can't always trace the cause of an effect that you're experiencing that affects you in reality. But cause and effect is everywhere. It's just people feel the need to make themselves feel important and unique and special in their sense of self and sense of reality, and tie what's happening to them to some cause that was also previously tied to them. So since it's happening to them right now, oh well, it's got to be tied to me somehow. Got to have a causal relation to me somehow, and if not in my life here that I can see, well then it has to come from a previous life. It's all delusions of the mind. So to continue, when you align with reality, you are going in accordance with the truth, as the truth is found in reality of what is. Currently, our way of living and our general behaviors are not in accordance with the truth of reality as it is, or as we are willing to accept it. And we are living in falsity, which is not the truth, right or good. The most important pictographic first-level ancient symbolism to represent it all was the Egyptian Ma'at and related symbolism. Ma'at, as a concept, was truth, order, justice, law, upright, straightforward, which is good, right, moral, etc. All of the God stories together don't make sense realistically as a literal tale, because they are not supposed to originally. It's symbolism on symbolism, layers of symbolism. The Bible has the same basis despite its alterations and manipulation. The core imagery remains that can be seen in many places. Parables, even one quote of the character Jesus as saying, "You don't take this as literal, you fool. Take it as a parable." Everything is to be understood as a parable. That's what imagery is for. Analogy, correspondence, and imagery is for the imagination to create connections as a parabolic, analogous, metaphorical, symbolic narrative and story. For us to make sense of ourselves and reality through this symbolism of things that we can reference and understand, and then correspond it to something else we're trying to understand. We use the analogy of those two things in order to relate them to each other, so to bring understanding of one thing into another in order to bring understanding into that other thing that we didn't have, because the analogy is valid and can be applied. You can apply analogies and correspondences blindly and incorrectly to validate a purely speculative belief. That's not called grounding things in reality. Simply a correspondence and cohesion that you create between two things, or one's actually can be verified and the other one isn't, but you're going to create that second unverifiable into a reality simply based on correspondence and analogy, is a great problem we have in human abstraction that's gone, it's thousands and thousands of years this has been a problem. And then we accept those beliefs as truths and as realities. The belief is a big problem. You know why origins matter? To trace back the origins of concepts. That's why they matter. Where do all the beliefs come from? The consciousness of humans. Herein lies the source of manipulation and mind control. We are fed and sold beliefs and concepts, and we buy into them and gobble them up into our minds, and they go into recesses of our subconscious and ingrain themselves as mind viruses, whereby we are all too willing to propagate them onto others as the acceptable and normalized standard of living or belief. Tracing back beliefs can discover what the original language and word symbolism is used for the origin of that belief. From the abstract lines and curvy lines of our modern letters and characters of communication, the source of these higher abstract symbols of communication is derived in more basic imagery and that of pictographs that relate more directly to reality, containing more inherent meaning from less abstraction. A picture of a bull's head has less abstraction than the letter A, which doesn't even exist in reality and is a completely abstract symbol. But the symbol of a bullhead has the meaning of a bullhead. What does that mean? Well, a bull is powerful in terms of the animals and in their husbandry, domination, control, or psychopathy, predation, way of living. The bull was the power and the strength, a symbol of fertility through that power and strength. So it has an inherent meaning. Understanding the original imagery and what it conveys about reality instead of speculative beliefs will allow us to understand how and why symbols were invented in the first place, which is to convey accurate reflections of reality and ourselves. This is how we can find the truth about ancient knowledge, about our true self-ideal, our true nature ideal, our human nature ideal, to live as a higher self-ideal according to a higher will of higher order consciousness and ways of living. But it's all within us. It's all in us. This is the capacity of consciousness, self, soul, spirit. As you, Ka, the spirit, the moral spirit, moral character, moral essence of your Ka, the power and strength of your arms, hands, and deeds, and the actions. Origins also matter to learn from mistakes and not repeat them, which can be predictive or repetitive if the mistakes are continuously actualized. Secondary experience can prevent us from ever creating evil, or we learn from repeating the same mistakes over and over. Secondary experience can be non-fictional or fictional. It does not matter to convey the narrative and story of a moral lesson. Origin stories are just that, stories. Don't take them literally. Look beyond the exoteric veil. True care is care for truth. True self is the truth. True self is the self of truth. So that ideal, that potential that you envision, that you can become, that everyone can become, as contrast to our former selves, as we currently are as lower selves, we can become higher selves. Because that higher self, that truer self, is the self of truth, which is idealized and as a potential within our consciousness that we can then manifest ourselves into being and becoming that aspect of truth as a self of truth. So again, this is why this understanding that I had, I was previously externalizing it as its own thing, as its thing existing somewhere else as an absolute, because I was all into the associating with God as an absolute, and the truth was an absolute, and so then I'd put the true self and everything, and I'd put that as an absolute somewhere else outside of us, but it's not. It's all internal. It's all within. So true care is care for truth. True self is the self of truth. Simple. God is said to be truth. Gandhi has that quote. We are meant to live truth, be truth, become truth, aspire to truth. God is a word symbol. Symbols get altered and made literal and can provide comfort in new abstract fantasy belief constructs. So this is also ma'at, truth, justice, law, order. That's what ma'at is, the foundation conception. So symbols get altered and made literal and can provide comfort in new abstract fantasies and fantasy belief constructs. So I can't prove this. I'm not trying to force you to believe it, as nothing in the ancient past can be proven apart from what we have before us now to learn from, which is part of my point. That we have these parts from the past, and people want to attribute all these fanciful validations to these exoteric stories and narratives as if they were automatically true just because they're ancient and the Egyptians talked about it. That's because of the infatuation and reverence for the Egyptians. It could happen with other people too. Anatoly Fomenko has it for Rus, prior to Russia, the early Rus civilization. Michael Tsarion has it for the Celts in Ireland. For him, everything starts there. Maybe it does. I know historically a lot of things are traced to Ireland, but in my understanding, as part of at least the fabricated history, which is why we can't verify anything from history, is this fabricated history, this lineage, the genealogies. You have the Tuatha De Danann, and they were the tin miners. I'm pretty sure it's the Tuatha De Danann, and that relates to Dan and the tribe of Dan in Israel. And before that, it comes those tribes and the peoples and the two dragon cults, the two dragon sects. They probably, historically, it can loosely be traced to the Black Sea basin, Caspian Sea, Black Sea, or more towards the Black Sea. I'm not sure if Anatolia is in there, but you have the Scythians and the Phrygians. These peoples, there's a history in there in terms of tribes in the Black Sea basin and moving eastward as Israelites and other peoples, and then into Egypt as well, maybe. And this is all post-flood and post-ice age. So then people settle there, and they settle in different areas, in Sumer and the Levant in the Middle East, and the Nile Delta in Egypt. And then you have people from the Levant in the Middle East, the tribe of Dan, allegedly, that becomes the Tuatha De Danann, who are the tin miners in Ireland. And you had the Phoenicians, who are also related back, and at least in the Bible, they trace it to Ham, from the son of Noah, that eventually Ham or Shem, that became the Hebrews. And then you have different sects, and then different parts of the family go on. Anyways, the Canaanites, Phoenicians, they were originally Hebrews. They all come from the same family source. Most likely in terms of language, it comes from Egypt. So that's why the reconstruction, I'm getting off topic, I'm just going to stop and finish the paragraph. This is other research I've done years ago that I haven't done any work on, I'd have to get back into, but just as speculative aspects of history and how it's created. My point was that the ancient past can't be proven. So take the explanation I give you, and take the explanation others give you, and take the story itself, and see if you can actually make sense of it with whoever explains it, me or someone else or whatever. Try to explain it yourself, and try to relate it and reference the symbolism in the story and narrative back to reality, back to here and now, that matters, our lives that we're living. Or you can just accept the exoteric fantasy story about all these notions and concepts, and you think that matters in life? No, it doesn't. Sorry to burst your bubble, people. Can you reach a level of making sense of things in reality, as opposed to not making sense of these stories and narratives? So exoterically, they don't make sense, but when esoterically, in the wisdom traditions, yeah, they're going to make sense, and they're going to make sense in reality, here and now, in your real life that matters. So the only way to make sense of the story narratives is to understand them as symbolism, metaphor, and parables. For example, this has even been instructed by Jesus in the Bible. Faith and belief is antipathy to true intelligence. The stories and narratives of the Bible, Egypt, and other places do not make much sense until you look at them in the imaginative, creative, metaphorical, allegorical, parabolic, and symbolic representations of reality and ourselves. And also in terms of anthropomorphized, personified, and projected representations of reality and ourselves, of ourselves through reality, more accurately that way, because we anthropomorphize, personify, and project ourselves onto other things, and we also use reality, symbols from reality, to reference ourselves as understanding of ourselves through the symbolism in reality. And we also have concepts that we anthropomorphize onto. So that's that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time and attention. Stay tuned for part 3. Have a nice day. Take care. Peace.